On the evening of July 3rd, 1954, Marilyn Sheppard was bludgeoned to death in her bed. She was the wife of neurosurgeon Sam Sheppard, who quickly became the prime suspect.
Investigators do find signs of an attempted burglary, but they suspect that Sheppard has committed the murder himself and staged a burglary as a cover-up.
In December of that year, a jury found him guilty of his wife's murder. But in 1966, he was granted a retrial and was ultimately exonerated, thanks to the effective theatrics of his superstar lawyer, F. Lee Bailey.
How do you explain his conviction in the first place?
It was a result, according to Judge Weinman, and in my opinion, of mass hysteria generated by an overzealous press.
Audiences today might recognize Sheppard's story from the hit 60s TV show The Fugitive, which later became an even more popular film starring Harrison Ford.
Are you suggesting that I killed my wife? Are you saying that I crushed her skull and that I shot her? How dare you?
But the case of Sam Sheppard and Bailey's showcase role in it were initially headed to the big screen long before that Harrison Ford blockbuster. Filmmaker and author of Sidney J. Furie, Life and Films, Daniel Krimmer.
So F. Lee Bailey had defended Sam Sheppard in what was then a very famous. It was like the equivalent of the O.J. Simpson trial back in the 50s. And what's funny is that F. Lee Bailey would of course play a little role in the O.J. case years later.
I want you to assume that perhaps at some time since 1985 or 6, you addressed a member of the African American race as a. Is it possible that you have forgotten that act on your part?
Otto Preminger was known, I guess, for these kind of publicity coups or maneuvers wherein he would cast real-life either political figures or mayors and in acting roles, and then he would make headlines with that coup. I'm thinking of he cast Joseph Welch in Anatomy of a Murder. Welch is the guy who told Joe McCarthy off at the Army McCarthy hearings, and that was the beginning of McCarthy's downfall. He also cast Mayor Lindsay, New York's Mayor Lindsay, in a later movie called Rosebud, and then he wanted to cast Martin Luther King Jr. in Advise and Consent, even though that didn't come to pass. So Preminger was always known for trying to make. So I think that when Furie and his partner at the time, Brad Dexter, his producing partner, kind of in cooperation with Bob Evans at Paramount, they announced at one point that F. Lee Bailey would basically play himself in the movie it was originally slated as a more quote unquote factual telling of the Sheppard murder case and trial.
With Sidney J. Furie behind the director's chair, the filmmaker who had already helmed the acclaimed films The Leather Boys, The Ipcress File, and The Appaloosa, the project went through an evolution which saw Bailey taking the exit door and a new star entering the picture.
Eventually they wind up with Barry Newman. He was an unknown New York actor, or more obscure New York actor at the time. He was mostly known for his work on stage. He had done a few low-budgeted movies, but yeah, he was a mostly obscure actor that, if memory serves, Sid had seen on stage. And then he was called in for an audition, and he was the best in Sid's eyes, and then it became the object of trying to convince Paramount that it was okay to cast him, because I think they wanted a name. And then, of course, Sid had just come from directing Brando in The Appaloosa and Frank Sinatra in the Naked Runner. And he had euphemistically, I'll say, uphill battles with working with them. So it was, Sid was known for telling Paramount about Barry Newman. Is like, I'd rather work with actors than stars.
With Barry Newman in place, the film began to take shape. Although the names had been changed, much of the film's premise remained loyal to the general outline of the Sheppard murder case. An admired physician's wife, is bludgeoned to death in their home, and he's the prime suspect.
I guess I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, I was awakened by someone calling my name. I think it was Wilma. It seemed to be coming from upstairs. It must have been much later because it was dark and there was nobody else around, so I went upstairs. When I got to the room, I saw this shape, form or something in the room near the bed.
The doctor hires a big-shot, cocky lawyer to defend him.
You're getting in a little over your head, aren't you, Petra Kelly?
Shelley.
Shelley, Kelly, what the hell difference does it make?
There's an initial conviction and an eventual acquittal.
The case against Dr. Jack Harrison is dismissed, and this court adjourns.
The surprise of the film, however, is that the murder courthouse plot takes a back seat to a study of its central character, the brash, silky smooth defense attorney, Tony Petrocelli, played by Newman.
Look, I've got the DA outside. Now, he's willing to accept a plea of manslaughter. Could mean a year inside, or maybe nothing, if we were contemporary insanity.
So you think I killed her?
I didn't say that.
And why the offer?
Because I'm obliged to inform you of it.
And you think I should take it?
It's a pretty good offer.
If I did it.
If you did it.
Did I?
Look, Jack, I don't keep cats and dogs in the house because they eat too much. Little children bore the pants off me. When I go to a ball game, I root for the visitors. I never send a Christmas card. I don't cry at weddings and funerals, and I cheated my wife if I had the time.
Okay, I get the picture. You're one solid block of ice.
With one soft spot. You're innocent until someone proves to me that you're guilty.
For an actor of Barry's caliber at that point, it was, a definite triumph to score such a part, I think. Very, very character-driven film.
The character of Tony Petrocelli is both an irresistible charmer and a slithery snake. His slick theatrics in the courtroom might find more suitability in a big city, but instead he chooses to practice in the Deep South, foregoing a high-priced luxury car for a beaten-up camper. His fish-out-of-water status makes him instantly appealing, but he also provokes a sense of conflict in the audience. In spite of his sturdy looks, good humor, and common man touches, he's morally bankrupt. Does it fall in line with the other kinds of characters and themes that Sidney was preoccupied with?
Well, this is a shift because the first part of his career, what really marked all of his early films most profoundly, every film up until The Lawyer, is about kind of these wounded males or these kind of like strange. I mean, you have Harry Palmer in Ipcress File cooking the meal for the woman. He wears glasses. The woman kind of in the one scene in Ipcress File takes his glasses off, so she kind of is making the moves.
You're very professional.
So are you.
It's these kind of like emasculated, male specimens. I mean, you have Brando, basically in the Appaloosa, he's really cut down to size. I mean, he even loses the arm wrestling match between himself and John Saxon with the Scorpions, which I'm shocked, by the way, that someone like Tarantino hasn't come along to pilfer that.
You are very smart, senor.
And you are very impolite. Unless it is the custom to try to make a fool of strangers in this little place.
Frank Sinatra also, he's just, you see him barfing at one point in the movie, which is like you didn't see Old Blue Eyes, to an Old Blue Eyes movie to see him barf. So like all throughout, like you had these kind of emasculated or wounded males, and then you arrive at The Lawyer, which is really a shift in that. You have, I think a very almost macho specimen who, is fighting on behalf of a client like he's fighting in a boxing match. So the Lawyer really marked a kind of a much more of a shift in the types of male characters that Sidney was personifying and bringing to the screen.
Before I adjourn this court,
Bothers the hell out of you, doesn't it?
What does?
Express sincere appreciation.
That there's one thing you're never going to know.
To be honest with you, Jack, I really don't give a damn.
Service to the people of this state.
In retrospect, one can see how the lawyer fit right into the conception of the anti-heroic male that dominated cinema screens at that time. It's also, at its heart, a film about winning and losing, and what both bring out in a man's character. One of the great stars of the time, Robert Redford, was also preoccupied with exploring the themes of what it meant to be a winner, as he would later show in films like Downhill Racer and The Candidate. So it's no stretch that the same theme took a front seat in his collaboration with Sidney J. Furie, which was also released in 1970, Little Foss and Big Halsey. The Lawyer failed to make much of a ripple when it was released in theaters on March 10th of that year, but watching it today, you can clearly recognize a character that television has been cannibalizing for decades. The good-looking attorney with an even better-looking girlfriend, and a flair for pulling off any outrageous acts of showmanship that can set his clients free. It's no wonder, then, that audiences would not see the last of Petrocelli. Barry Newman returned to the character for the NBC legal drama Petrocelli, which aired for 2 seasons between '74 and '76.